Hello, welcome to our newest episode of AW Confidential. We celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month. We celebrate every year from September 15th to October 15th. And it offers an opportunity for Latinos just around the world, the US particularly, to sort of get in touch with their Latinidad and celebrate it. And also, I think it's a good opportunity to think about what does it mean to be Latino. Decades ago, many of our parents came to this country with expectations to do well, but they had to assimilate into an American society and be accepted. We've heard stories of actors like Raquel Welch, Anthony Quinn, who have Americanized their names in order to fit in and hide their Latinidad in exchange for a false sense of belonging. Today, we are trending towards that Latinidad and showing more unity and pride than ever. The Hispanic Sentiment Study of 2023 is a research project by We Are All Human Foundation, along with Nielsen, powered by Toluna in partnership with Televisa Univision. One of their findings in this analysis showed that Latino pride is up 61 to 64%. The study reflects positive movement in the right direction. Now, these are signs indicating that we are feeling more pride. But all news is not good news. Latinos are also feeling more undervalued in society and less represented by big brands. And in this episode, we are going to explore a little bit of these findings with a very special guest. Claudia Romo Edelman is an incredibly experienced professional with 25 years with global human efforts. She is an activist for diversity and equity and inclusion. She has collaborated with organizations that include UNICEF, the World Economic Forum, and has served as special advisor to the United Nations. Claudia is also the founder of and CEO of We Are All Human Foundation and Hispanic Star. Claudia, welcome. I tried to make it brief because you have such an incredible resume.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all what you do.
Thank you. I mean, you are a trailblazer. So thank you. And I'm so, like I mentioned before we got on camera, I am so filled with pride because growing up, you know, I was born and raised in New York, and my parents came from the Dominican Republic, and they didn't feel seen, and your efforts are changing that, and it seems to be that we're moving in the right directions in some aspects, of course. Now, the study offered valuable insight. I did take a look at it. It was also eye-opening because as a Latina, I'm curious, what was one of the most surprising findings for you in this study? For me, it's just been the fact that we are feeling undervalued, which it's surprising because, we have all this Latino pride happening and more firms, looking for Latino content. So what was the most surprising finding for you?
Well, the Hispanic Sentiment Study 2023 is a comparative analysis of the Hispanic Sentiment Study we did in 2018. You see, when I moved to the States, that was the first ever time that heard that I was a Hispanic. I lived my entire life as a happy Mexican, and I never heard that word before in my life. And I was like, what is this thing that I'm going to be part of? Latina, what? So it was really, for me as a newcomer, fresh and working in a global environment, a new word, but also a new environment. And I started getting curious about this new reality, particularly when I got married to an American. I was like, okay, my life as a diplomat is right. I'm not going to be traveling around the world anymore, and I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to pay more attention to this group that I belong to. And when I started looking at the data was fantastically big, but the reality of Latinos was fantastically small. We in paper are powerful, but not even ourselves. We look at ourselves powerful. We see ourselves as weak. So the first Hispanic sentiment study, what was really done to understand what is happening, that the reality of the numbers seems so different than the perception and the reality on the streets of the country. And I found there the three main things that have guided the work that the World Human Foundation has done for the last 6 years, 5 years, which is number one, we don't know. 77% of Latinos do not know of their own contributions to the country. So therefore, they cannot feel proud because they don't know how much we contribute, how many we are, how young we are, how much GDP we generate, how many employers we have. And number two is that we are clearly proud to be Latinos, but do not, like, we identify as Latinos in a 90%, but we do not act as a Latino community. So we put that combo together. We are unaware of our contributions, and all the contributions and all the perception we hear comes from media telling us we're bad hombres, we're narcos, we are, like the roles that we're depicted. We're not in front of camera, we're not behind camera, and when we are, we're depicted as someone we're not. And on the other hand, we feel lonely. We are not together acting as a community. And the third element doesn't come from the Hispanic sentiment study, is that 76% of Latinos cannot be themselves at the workplace. So you have to pretend you're someone you're not when you come to work, and you leave yourself at home. So if you put that, literally what it is a recipe for disaster for a large proportion of the population. So we said what we really need to do is focus on the unity and pride through education, through data, by building the cases, by understanding that together we're stronger, that we're stars, that together we shine. And so 5 years later, after COVID, after George Floyd, after the shooting in El Paso, after all these elements that were really exponential, like making exponential all the issues that we had, the result is that we are more united. In the Hispanic sentiment study, you can see that people got the memo of together we're stronger, together we shine. It's easier if we start connecting through those elements that make us all Latinos: our music, our family, our values, our culture. And we also saw an increase because of that in our pride, thanks to Bad Bunny and like the culture that is happening, thanks to the education that we have, thanks to the 5 ministers that are happening in this government, thanks to a number of role models out there, we are more united and more proud to be Latinos. And our elements that reflect us are in the rise. So Espanol is on the rise. So people that are 45 or over probably are, are not Spanish fluent because their parents were assimilating them and said, like, no, mijo, don't speak the language, just like make like everybody else. That generation is coming back. There's a retro Latinidad. There's an acceptance of the identity and the Latinidad, and that is pushing through music and food and culture, and the language is going up. The only issue that really surprised me from the Hispanic sentiment study, and didn't surprise me but shocked me and scared me, is that while we're getting more united, getting more proud, being reflected, like the elements of our identity are reflecting us every time more, there is a potential disconnect to the American narrative. So Latinos feel more proud to be Latinos and more united as a community, but feel more excluded by the American narrative. We
Mm.
don't feel reflected by big brands. We don't feel reflected in media. We don't think that the diversity, equity, and inclusion has benefited us, and we feel invisible. And that by 20 points is a massive drop from 48%, from 68% to 48%. So that means that 1 in every 2 Latinos feels that himself is not connected to Americans. We feel more Latinos. And so that is where I think that the next 5 years of my foundation, and I hope that more and more brands are going to start acting upon making a campaign to portray Latinos better, to make sure that we are seeing ourselves in the ads in the ads of the brands that we consume, in the movies that we go and see, in the companies that we operate, because I think that there's a massive risk out there of Latinos not feeling excluded and continue to do so.
Wow, that is pretty surprising, but it sort of makes sense because as we become more of who we are, if we're not included in those areas, then we feel left out. So that's it is concerning. I completely agree. And you mentioned our contributions. Latinos contribute over, I believe, $2 trillion to the US GDP. Latino owned businesses contribute about 800 billion per year to our economy. Over 70% of Latinos have a diploma and at least 20% have it at college level. Then 81% of, and I only want to share these stats because I believe they're important. Numbers tell a story, and 81% of Latinos living in the US are citizens. So we're making significant contributions to society, yet the general sentiment is that we're undervalued. There seems to be there are strides happening, but the optimism is decreasing. As someone who has their finger on the pulse, what is your perspective on this disconnect? If we're doing all these amazing things, why do we feel um, like we're not being valued? We're not um, getting as far as we should. There just seems to be like a disconnect there.
And that is the perception disconnect. So because if you look at it in the big perspective, if you would be like me, a newcomer, right, like a couple of years ago, and I was like, I don't understand, there's an enigma here, something makes no sense, because our reality is powerful but our perception is weak. And our product is amazing, and yet we're seen as someone we're not, or we're not seen at all. And the issue here is that Hispanics, and let's be clear, the future of this country is Latino. Hispanics are the drivers of America's prosperity, power, and progress. That number that you just said, $2 trillion in the GDP, that was last year, $2.8 trillion. Do you know that in less than a year we grew to $3.2 trillion in the purchasing power? We generate 14% of the GDP of the country. That means that every Latino can go out in the street and look at anybody in the eye, anybody that rejects you, anybody that looks at you as a piece of, like nothing, and look at them in the eye and say, you're welcome. You're welcome for the 14% of your salary and your salary and your salary. We're generating 14% of the salary of everyone in this country. And we should be celebrated as such. We need to be seen as contributors, as positive contributors to the country. In an aging America, Latinos are driving, are paying for the Medicare, are paying for the taxes, we're paying for Social Security. So we have to be seen as positive contributors to the country, which is what we are. And so, what it really needs to happen is that we unify in the big perspective, right? Like what we need to do is act as a whole and not elbow each other, which is happening. There's less fragmentation. Latinos are moving from the scarcity mentality to the abundance mentality, which is amazing. And I celebrate the progress. Now, what we need to do is unify our efforts in order to change our perspective, our perception. Change our perception by educating ourselves with our power. It's like if you're Popeye, you have to eat the spinach, and the spinach comes in the form of data and the form of history, and making sure that you understand we are powerful, we're beautiful. And it is really hard, it is really hard to take that into account because we've been told for so long that we're bad, that we're nothing. So when I tell you that we're powerful, it's hard to swallow, it's hard to understand, but we're
It's hard to
beautiful.
embrace that when everyone,
It's so hard to embrace it. But we are powerful, and that's the message. We need to unify forces to make sure that every Latino feels powerful because we are powerful, and that we take our power as a turning table, as flipping the script, as acting the script that belongs to us, which is contributors to the country, understanding that America is made of stars and we are one of them. And if we start unifying our forces to flip the script, from the stereotypes to the values, from the biases to the reality, from like from weak to powerful, which is what we are, then we can start changing our representation, the way in which we show up in corporate leadership positions, the way that we are 19% of the population but only 1% in politics. It's going to switch. The way in which we're 19% of the population but only 2% in corporate America senior positions. The way that we are 9% as Latinas of this country and less than 1% in the C-suite of this country. And that is why it's so important, and that's why I launched a podcast right now, and that's why what you're doing is so important, that we educate everybody, that we give everybody a mirror that is not distorted, a mirror that contains the data, the playbooks, the resources, and the tools so that Latinos feel empowered and know that together we can actually shine.
Thank you for sharing that. That was I try not to get emotional, but I recall with, growing up, like I mentioned initially, my parents came to this country from the Dominican Republic and they were looking for something better. I get to create the life of my dreams because, and sit here with you because they followed their dreams to come here for a better life. So as we start our own families, we raise children of the future. How do we empower and encourage them to pursue their own dreams and, like you said, embrace their power? Because if everyone else is telling you one thing, how do you raise children to, think differently?
We have been lucky that we have our parents, we owe it all to them, and it is good to be emotional. We need to understand we are the result of the sacrifice, full sacrifice of our parents, our ancestors, our abuelas, our tias that came to home with 2 to 3 jobs, bleeding hands, giving it all, putting it all on the table so that you and I can have the opportunities that we have, so that we can be the first generation that is graduating college, that we can be the first generation that is able to have a podcast, or that can go to college, or sorry, to go to corporate America, or have a job and even do wealth. We are that generation that is benefiting from the sacrifices of our ancestors, but we have a duty, and our duty is to be the transition generation that just has to finish the job. And that means that we have to embrace our calling. We have to embrace the job that we have to do, which is, I know we have to take some bruises. I am okay. And I have to accept that people are going to come and say, like, oh, you again with your Latino thing. Yes, me again, knocking the door with my Latino thing. Because unless you hear it out, unless we change it, we can't open the door to the next generation so that they are fully paid, fully seen, and fully respected. We are not seen, not heard, not valued, but that can change in one generation. We can totally make the next generation be free of that, which is exactly the dreams, the wildest dreams of our ancestors. So let's make those sacrifices pay off by knowing that we have to absorb the data, get a couple of bruises until we knock the door, until they say, like, okay, I'll hear you again on your Latino. What do you need? And so that we can start putting in our children the no limit vision, that you can do it. You're a star, mijo. You have get your wings out there. Dream big, because the world is yours, because we're the future of this country. And when we're able to transmit that possibility of the future, when we're able to attract the allies and the mentors and the sponsors that want us, when we're able to create the playbooks the way that I'm trying with the podcast a la Latina, so that Latinas can make it to the first level, to the C-suite, that moment that moment is going to start changing the way in which we take the responsibility of pride, of unity, and of openness, of like presenting the world is the sky. Because in this country, in this reality that we have, Yvette, a lot of the times we're thinking that there's a seat at the table, there's one seat at the table, and we defend it a lot, but there's no seat at the table because there's no table. It's only a country full of opportunities for all Latinos if we support each other, if we dream big together, and if we embrace each other, support each other, mentor each other, buy from each other, get the access code, share the access code so that all Latinos can rise. And that is the obligation that we have, and that's the way we're going to pay back what our ancestors have done for us.
Ah, thank you. That was inspiring. So you are such a huge advocate of our community. You empower Latinos through your work with We Are All Humans and Hispanic Star. And thank you for those contributions because they will outlive you, me, our children, and it's something that is here to stay. The foundation is incredible. So thank you for your work. Now, I read that you've been going to Davos for 26 years. I had no idea. And I feel, like I said, so proud. Then 4 years ago, or probably a little more, you began We Are All Humans, and you launched the Hispanic Promise. And I think it's really important to highlight those projects because I know, because I sort of try to keep a pulse on what's going on in the Latino community, but I think it's important for us to share. Maybe if you can share some of the pillars of the Hispanic Promise and just give us a little background on the importance of this work because it's hugely important.
Absolutely. The only thing I wanted to say about the moment in which we are right now, and you're saying that I've been doing a lot, this is our time. All of us have an opportunity to be part of history that will outlive us, all our contributions. You and I and everyone else, we're seeing how the dam is breaking, the water is leaking. So don't waste the opportunity to just put your hands on the wall so that it really breaks and you're part of that incredible historic change that we have the opportunity to be part of. So don't shy away from it. Do your part, whether it is in your organization, in your sports club, in your church. Just go and talk to people about Latinos being positive contributors to the country. Open the eyes to the dark, like to the people that are in the dark that don't know and that they are just based thinking on stereotypes of Latinos. We have to move the invisible to visible, the negative to positive, and the takers to makers. And we can do it only if all of us are
And
doing it together.
And just to mention, because I don't want to let this escape me, what do you worry about? You know how the programs, diversity, inclusion, certain diversity programs are being impacted or sort of put to a halt in educational institutions in certain firms. Like there is a change, and it's working against us. Do you worry about that change there? Because it's almost like we're regressing.
we uh, Ambitious goals cannot be done alone and cannot be done pain free. So this is a bump. It's time to double down. It's time to take hands and like hold hands with each other and let's go. I don't worry, like no ocuparse, no preocuparse. Let's go. And that's the way I think that we should go. And on the Davos, the World Economic Forum, yeah, in like 26 years, I think it is one of the most important global platforms that I know. I worked there for 10 years, so I know it quite well. So for me, it's quite handy. And I launched the Hispanic Promise with Sid Wilson from ASER, the Hispanic Association of Corporate Responsibility, some 4 years ago, because we understood that it was really important. Everybody wants to do the right thing. Everybody wants to hire and be more diverse and have more innovative organizations. Latinos want to be in a place where they can be themselves. We just needed an instrument to make that change simple. We need to simplify, and we created this instrument along with 29 Hispanic organizations, the only instrument in the market that is like a corporate pledge, first of its kind, national, to prepare, hire, promote, retain, celebrate, and buy from Latinos. So everything that you need to create a corporate strategy on Latinos. And that's really important because only 10% of the Fortune 500 companies have a Latino strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, you don't invest, you don't create programs, you don't, put the money on the table where it needs to be. And the Hispanic Promise was launched in Davos 4 years ago. There's more than 320 companies that have signed it. As I said, we have most of the Latino organizations that work with corporate America are part of it. So it's a great, solid instrument. But here's the best part. We have the incredible donation, not only starting with the University of Chicago and IBM, but now Bain, the consulting firm, is doing a multi-million dollar donation to make sure that the Hispanic Promise is as polished and as well rounded as possible so that companies not only sign the pledge, but also know how to activate it, how to make it reality. So we're launching at our Hispanic Leadership Summit December 6th and 7th here in New York at the United Nations. We're launching what we call the 3.0, the Hispanic Promise 3.0, that is better, actualizada y mejorada, that is better equipped with more best practices, lessons learned, directory of partners on the 6 pillars that the Hispanic Promise constitutes. And I really, really ask everyone listening in your podcast to make sure that you work in an organization that has made a commitment to you. If your company has not signed the Hispanic Promise, rush back to HR, rush back to your diversity, equity, and inclusion department and tell them that they are like there's a massive opportunity to sign the Hispanic Promise, to recommit to the Hispanic Promise, so that they know how to make more inclusive environments, which is the goal of everyone.
Oh, this is amazing, and I hope that our audience is encouraged, because there is a lot of information out there that can discourage us, and you are a pillar of what is possible. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. One of the things that I love to do at the end of our interviews is share some sort of quote, mantra, piece of advice, and I wanted to ask you, we have discussed some of the work that you've been doing and how you're bringing Latinos and Latinas forward. Can you share your final thoughts on, you know, as far as what can we do ourselves, each individual, on this journey to promote that equality and just live more authentically, because I think that it still happens, right? We go into, for example, a corporate environment and we straighten our hair, or we don't speak Spanish, or there's certain things that we still do, I think, to this day, to sort of fit in. So do you have any final thoughts that can encourage us to be more Latino or be proud of our Latinidad?
I think that we come all with an ingrained world that says we can do hard things. So we knowing that we can do hard things, knowing that we're the most resilient, resourceful, and hardworking community of all, I would say that my mantra is take someone with you. And take someone with you, understanding that all the conditions are there for us to win this battle. And this battle is for every Latino to be able to be seen and heard and valued if we support each other. So take someone with you
I
and don't
love
give
that.
up, because the hope is there. And I hope that tools like your podcast or the podcast that I just launched, A La Latina, the playbook to succeed being your authentic self, are resources that people can use. I hope that the platform of the Hispanic Leadership Summit happening December 6th and 7th in New York, and then our gala that aims to be the Met Gala for Latinos, are platforms where you can come and support, show up, be part of change, be there, engage with the conversation, take someone with you so that we can all succeed, because Hispanic progress is American progress, and America is made of stars, and we're one of them.
Ah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you please share with our listeners how to find out more about you, Hispanic Star? Just let us know where everyone can find you.
Everything, and I hope that it is a good resource for everybody. Everything is under hispanicstar.org, and I am Claudia Romo Edelman in all social media platforms. And our podcast is wherever you have your favorite podcast, that's where we are.
A la Latina. I love that
A
name.
la Latina.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias, Claudia. You are
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I look forward to seeing you at the Hispanic Leadership Summit. And thank you, thank you, thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. And thank you for
Bye.
joining us on this amazing episode of the AW Confidential podcast. Talk to you soon.